Nice to see you guys here today. Thanks for coming out in the wintry mixed weather that we have. And what I'm going to ask is a rhetorical question, so you don't have to answer it, because I'll go on after that. What is reality? Okay? And for each one of us, reality is something different. And I've noticed in the last couple of years, there's a whole lot of people out there trying to figure out what reality is. There's a lot of scientists trying to figure out, there's a lot of people on the fringes trying to figure out and telling you what their vision is and everything else. And it's interesting because for me, reality is whatever you feel it is. You know? Your reality is not going to be the same as somebody else's. No way. We are in this room together. We can all look around and we can see things in this room. And we may be drawn to certain things more than others, so later on we might remember those things, but we're not going to remember all the other things. And one of the things that you see is me up here, right? But you're all sitting in a different location, so your perspective is different. What you focus on is different. Everything in your life leading up to this point has created how you look at things. Every experience you've had, whether you remember it consciously or not, has developed within you to help you look at things in a certain way. If you come from a particular type of family and they have certain customs and everything, that's going to be a huge part of how you view the world. And now we have seen in these last 10 years or so a wide variety of division in the world, not just here, but we're more aware of it. We're seeing more, we're learning more because we have the internet, we have all these different outlets, platforms, etc. that people can connect to. Some people refuse to connect to them. They go, that's not their reality, okay? They don't like that, that's fine. But you can become a little too overwhelmed with some of the information that's out there. So you may shut down and you may not look at that. You don't want that to affect the way you look at your life. Some of us do not want to use modern technology. We know people like that. And I'm sure almost everybody here has had a run-in with somebody who's like very proud of themselves for not having a computer, not having the internet. But they have a smartphone and they don't realize all that is on there. And they only use it for talking or texting. So that's their reality and they're quite happy with it and that works for them. Now, right now, you can look at me, and I am wearing a multi-dimensional, you might say, a sweater that's active, okay? It's got different things on it. Some people are going to notice one thing, some people are going to notice a different thing. And that's the way we are. If you haven't seen something before, you're going to notice it more than you are the other things around it that you have seen. That's just a fact. Repetition is something that you see it over and over and over, so it doesn't make as big of an imprint on you when you've seen it several times. When we watch children, little children, walking around or just gazing at things, everything is so new to them. And they're just like so fascinated by all this stuff. But when they start getting older, they're not as fascinated by that same stuff because they've gotten used to it. They see it now, they know what it is, they know what its purpose is, not a big deal. Our goal is really, as humans, is to keep learning and to keep finding those things that create for us, that bring us something new, something exciting, something wonderful that we can recognize. Unfortunately, a lot of people are not raised in families or in situations or in countries even where they can have as positive of a living as some other places have. So depending a lot on where you're brought up, if you're brought up in a particular religion, there are cultural customs that you must follow because of where you live. your viewpoint, your perception of everything around you is going to be so different from anybody who comes from another area. So one of the things that I found is that I have friends from all over the place, and those people who have suffered a great deal of trauma in their youth or at any point in their life are going to view everything completely differently. One of my friends, her mother had trauma in her life. Her grandmother had trauma in her life. They passed this trauma down to their children. So now everybody in her family has trauma that's been passed down. And we call that generational trauma. And this is quite common in families where they just pass things down over and over and over, and a lot of them don't even know where it comes from. Every once in a while, I'll find myself frustrated with something, and I'll say something that isn't me. And I go, ah, my grandmother. You know, because she and her mother both had a huge amount of children and had to, like, be very frugal and do a lot of things that they wouldn't have cared to do before. And they were also basically business people at heart who didn't get to be business people. They were spent so much time taking care of their families, doing this, making sure they had enough food, all of that stuff. And everybody was taken care of with their basic needs, that they didn't get a chance to follow their dreams, which back then, they weren't allowed to have too many, okay? As a woman, they were expected to get married, have kids, stay at home, raise a family, cook, clean, etc. And that's what they did, but they tried to find outlets. My grandmother was a seamstress, so she used to create a lot of things. She made pillows for us, and I remember she really wanted to give me this pillow one time, and she made it and it was very beautiful, but she didn't have money for stuffing, so she used newspapers. And you do what you can with what you have, and it was the fact that she made the gift that was important. So I remember that. She used to do a lot of other things that we thought were kind of strange, but it came from her background of frugality. And my oldest sister just couldn't get where she was coming from, and I said, we've got to understand where she's coming from, what her background is, all of this. So all these different people we know that have generational trauma, no matter what level it is, are going to see things completely different from those of us who don't have it. Now, everybody has probably somewhere in their life a little bit of trauma, right? Absolutely. A little bit of trauma, here, there, everywhere. It may not be gargantuan like some people's, but it still affects us. It still makes us think. And it's like, as some of you in here have shared with me before, it's like you didn't get the parents you wanted. You may have gotten the parents you needed, but you didn't get the parents you wanted. You didn't get the kind of love you wanted. You didn't get the pat on the back when you needed it. Some of them were very tough love because that's all they knew. Okay? That was how they may have been raised. And they didn't know anything else. And that again goes with that generational trauma. But there's another kind of generational trauma that most people don't think about. And that is the kind that goes on in the world. My generation was born right after World War II. Our parents, other family members were there. Some died in them, some made it out with a lot of issues. So we had to deal with all of that. My age group, a lot of them went to Vietnam, and a lot of them didn't make it back. My brother-in-law had Agent Orange, was affected by that, and as he was in his 60s, he became very, very ill with a lot of different cancers, not just one, but several, and had to have a lot of surgeries, and that's basically what he died from, was because he was in a war that used chemical warfare. And it was non-discriminatory, it was just out there, they were doing their thing, but our people got it, and a lot of people have died from diseases they got from the Agent Orange. So that is a generational trauma right there. We have war is a generational trauma for many people. Being in a dictatorship is a generational trauma for everybody under that dictatorship. We have all these things going on all the time that affect us. When we see somebody who comes from a country that they've escaped from because it was horrible for them, dictatorship, we can't even imagine sometimes what they went through and what they went through to leave that place, what they had to leave behind. Friends of mine, when I was in high school, we had junior high and high school, their parents came from Cuba. They were both parents were doctors, psychiatrists, and they had family in Florida. So they told the government they were gonna go on vacation to visit their family. So they could only take with them the things that they could actually would bring on a vacation, which meant that the kids had to leave their dog behind in the care of someone else, had to leave everything that was really important to them that they couldn't carry with them, that wouldn't look like they were leaving, and they immigrated here. They came as refugees, basically. But they stayed with their family for a while, they got together, they got jobs as doctors, they got their whole thing going, and moved to my town and put their kids in the same school I was in. So we learned a lot about what they went through, and that affects their entire lives. I mean, I know people that have come from other places and they have these fantastic jobs, you know, really well-paying, good, you know, they were happy, and then they come here because they're refugees, and they can't have that life again because they have to like practically go to school again, do the whole bit, get trained, they have to know the language really well. And so many of these people with these really good degrees and all this other stuff can't have the job that they had before because they had to leave everything behind and had to start over. And that affects their entire life and the way they view things and the way they see things. Those of us who have never had to deal with all of this stuff have a completely different perspective about our life, and some of us may be very optimistic, very, very optimistic, because we haven't had the struggles that a lot of other people have. And even if you have had struggles, you can still be optimistic. You know, one of my friends, her mother taught her that you can't trust anyone. So, as she kept repeating it, that was a trauma for her, because she believed it. She believed it, and she made it happen for herself because she surrounded herself with people she couldn't trust, because what did it matter? You can't trust anybody, right? That's what my mom says. Nobody you can trust. And she had enough problems in her life as a child to understand that, yeah, I can't trust those guys, no, can't trust those guys, stuff like that. So we bring with us every single aspect that we've ever experienced into our life now, and we can heal from those. And so when we heal from them, our perspective will change. And that's a really good thing for us sometimes, because a lot of people can't get over what's happened to them. They can't find out what to do. They're stuck in this. And as Diva has told us before, her grandfather killed his wife with a machete and made the children all look at it. And she was pregnant with twins at the time. So he not only killed her, he killed the twins. They already had 18 kids, though, because all he did was keep her pregnant. But the kids had to live with that memory of him showing what he did. And luckily, an older child called the police and they took the father off. And then the recovery from that could be very long, and some people never recover from things like that. I had a friend who, when he was 15, his parents came home from going out one night and they heard shots outside. His dad had shot his mother and then killed himself. And that's a horrible thing to be the one to find that. So that is another trauma. We all have them. But the thing is, we all have these beautiful moments to look at too. And we need to focus on the good as well. and some people choose not to. But reality is different. You're sitting there, you have a completely different view of me than over here or in front, okay? You're not going to see the same thing that someone else is going to see. And this is what life is like around us all the time. We can't see other people's perspective in the same way we can see our own. And some people try to get you to see their perspective. And it's okay to see other people's perspective, but you cannot live by another person's perspective. You can only live by your own. And a lot of people make the mistake of thinking they control other people. We have free will. We do. We really have free will. And I'm sure everybody here has, at one point or another, heard something similar to this, that we are spiritual beings having a physical experience. And not to take everything too seriously. Because this changes. We are made of energy, okay? And energy never goes away. It just transforms into a different form of energy. So we are energetic beings having this experience, dealing with all sorts of different things going on in our life. What are we going to do with the information we receive? That's the question that a lot of us have, and it's different for each one of us. I literally have a hard time with people who try to tell me that I have to believe the way they believe. I have to see things their way. I must do things their way, you know? And it's funny because I recently got my emissions test. I passed, no problem, right? I had the piece of paper on the table. Now, you don't need to keep your emissions thing in your car. There's no cop is going to ask you to see your emissions test. It's on the computer. If they have to stop you for something, everything comes up on their little computer, okay? Now, my husband was trying to sit and he said, "Oh, you must put that in your glove compartment." No, I don't have to. Nobody's going to ever ask me for that. Have they ever asked you for that? No. It's not something they ask for. Your registration, your license, but not your insurance coverage, but not if you passed your emissions test or not. So, no, I don't have to carry that with me anywhere. That can stay at home. It's a receipt, okay? But a lot of people think everything should be done a certain way. We have people who are OCD, okay? Obsessive compulsive disorder. That is something that is born out of some kind of trauma usually. And it's a fear factor that you have that something isn't right with your world, so you've got to fix it. You've got to control it. People who have to control things have a completely different take on reality because they're trying to create a reality for themselves that suits them, that helps make them feel comfortable. And to understand all these things about other people is like a major job. We make mistakes all the time in communicating with people because we don't know where they're coming from. And we don't ask a lot of times. People assume that you're going to be like them. It's like with the weather today. A lot of people will say, "I'm not going out in that, and you shouldn't either." And it's like, okay, I could already see that a lot of what was coming down is not coming down anymore. But the thing is, that is a choice that you have to make for yourself, not someone else can make for you. All the things you do is a choice that you make. There are people out there who say that we are merely living in a simulation, that someone else has created this program and we are a part of the program. Yeah, whatever. Believe what you want to believe. There are people who say that there is no soul, that we are merely biological fabrications of something, and we have our DNA and everything, and the cells we have decide how we're going to behave, how we're going to react. So this is just one of those things that some people believe. I don't have to believe it. and I don't. I feel like we are spiritual beings. We all have souls. I get a little upset when people's viewpoints are changed just to suit what they want. And it's the whole thing with animals. There's a lot of thought out there that animals that are not human don't have emotions. I'm like, excuse me, if you've ever had any kind of creature that you take care of, they have emotions. Major emotions. Most of them are more empathic than most human beings. And to say they have a hive soul, the only things that have a hive soul are like bees, wasps, ants, insects like that, that live in a community. They all work together in that community. They have a telepathic connection with everybody because they are part of the same. But again, is that true? We don't know. It's something that we think is true, but we don't have proof for it. There was a woman several years ago who found a bee without wings. She could have just let it die. What did she do? She took it home with her, took care of it, made sure it had pollen from plants to used to just stroke the bee, do that kind of stuff. And the bee was very loving back to her. So is that a bee that has a hive mind? Or is that a bee that has a little bit of both? Maybe its own mind separate from the hive. So we don't know, but people have shown us by their actions, by their loving actions towards other creatures, that we are not that different. And our DNA is only between 2 to 7% difference than every other species that we know of on this planet. We are made of the same things. And there's just a few variations, a few tweaks that can give us a completely different species. I've been watching a lot of paleontology stuff lately, and one of the things that I love about paleontology is that they know that they're not an exact science. They know that we can't find out everything, and that new information may be coming up all the time, changing our reality, changing what we thought was real. Archaeologists look at things and they try to date them. Well, you can't date everything because you're not. You can carbon date a lot of things, but you cannot carbon date stone. So anything made out of stone, if it's been there, all these megalithic structures, they don't know when they were actually created. They're taking wild guesses a lot of times based on any organic material around them. But it's a fascinating study anyway to try and figure out where we all came from. But how much does it matter? How much does that matter where humans came from? And all the other animals and species, and we talk about, oh, this one's going extinct. Well, there have been millions of different species on this planet throughout its lifetime that have gone extinct. And we may be on the road to that ourselves at some point. And that's okay. We've done what we need to do. We've had our little time. Dinosaurs had a very long time because there was nothing to kill them until asteroids came and it's like, oh, hi. But yeah, the reality is we don't know what reality is. Okay? It's not the same for everybody. And it never will be. So, and that's okay. We don't have to have it be the same. What we need to do is to try and understand that somebody else's viewpoint is perfectly acceptable in their life. And for us to tell them otherwise is wrong. Accepting somebody for who they are instead of for what you think they could be is far more valuable than anything else you can do. Just the acceptance of that person, their viewpoint. You don't have to agree with it. You can say, I disagree, but I'm perfectly fine with you having the, you believing in what you believe in, and we can still be friends. And if you can't be friends, say, bye, have a nice life, enjoy your perspective. But to me, my perspective changes from the things I learn. And looking back at my life, I see the different stages that I've been through and how each of those stages has made me the person I am, how the mistakes I made make me who I am. Because if I hadn't made some of those decisions, I wouldn't have learned as much as I have over the years. And I'm still learning, and I'm still frustrated at times with people and their stuff, but I just try to keep it in my head and only complain to myself. Because complaining to everybody else isn't going to get me any better with anything, and it's not going to change who those people are. Can they be frustrating? Yes, I can be frustrating too, I'm sure, to many people. It's okay. We just have to learn to accept this as part of our reality, that these people are not going to believe in everything we believe, and they don't have to. And we don't have to believe what they believe. We just have to learn how to talk and how to communicate and get to know people. Ask somebody, you know, about themselves. Don't assume stuff, because that's the way your life was. Ask them, talk to them, get to know them, see who they are on the inside, because when you decide on who somebody is by looking at their outside, you miss a whole lot of really good information and wonderful stories, and just maybe somebody who is so loving and so wonderful that because they look so different from you, you're not giving them a chance. So just remember that everybody is different. Like, we may look a lot the same, we may have a lot of things in common, but we each have our own reality. We each have what's important to us, and learning what's important to somebody else makes you their friend. Because when you want to have somebody as a friend and you really do your best to get to know them, your life is enriched by their stories and sharing your story with them. So, reality, what is it? It's whatever you make it be. It's whatever you want it to be. It's how you see the world. It's your perception of everything. It changes. Not everybody's world is going to be the same, and it's okay. So thank you. Thank you for being here, and for having your own viewpoints, and for living your lives the way that you choose to live it. Thank you. Thank you, Risa.